you're building on Azure OpenAI, and your prompts contain customer data, names, emails, account numbers, sometimes health or payment details. Sending that raw to a model is a compliance and data residency problem waiting to happen. The decision isn't whether to redact personally identifiable information, PII, before it leaves your boundary. The decision is how. In the next few minutes, I'll lay out the criteria that actually matter. The 3 realistic approaches in Python, when each fits, and a recommendation you can ship. This is opinionated where it needs to be, so let's get into the trade-offs. Before picking a tool, get clear on what you're optimizing for. First, recall versus precision. Missing one social security number is worse than over-redacting a city name, so most teams bias toward recall. Second, reversibility. Do you need to restore the original values in the model's response, or is one-way masking fine? Third, latency budget, since redaction sits in your request hot path. Fourth, entity coverage and language support. Fifth, where the redaction runs and whether that call itself leaves your compliance boundary. Score your options against these 5, not against feature lists. In practice, you have 3 approaches. Regular expressions, sheep, fully local, great for structured tokens like credit cards or emails, but blind to names and context, so recall is poor. Microsoft Presidio, an open-source Python library combining named entity recognition with recognizers and reversible anonymization. You run it yourself, so data never leaves your process, and you can plug in custom recognizers. Or Azure AI Language PII detection, a managed service with strong recall and many entity categories, but it's a network call you must keep inside your boundary. My rule of thumb, Presidio for most production workloads, the managed service when you want Microsoft to own model quality. Here's the Presidio path, which I reach for most often. The analyzer detects entities and returns spans with types and confidence scores. The anonymizer then replaces them. The key move is using a reversible operator. Encrypt the original values with a key you hold. Send the masked text to Azure OpenAI. Then decrypt the matching spans in the response. That gives you a one-way wall to the model while still being able to reconstruct real values for your user. Tune the score threshold and add custom recognizers for your domain identifiers. Like internal account formats, regex alone would catch, but NER would miss. This reversibility choice deserves its own beat because it changes your design. If you only need the model's reasoning and never echo back specifics, use one-way replacement. Swap each entity for a typed placeholder like person1. It's simpler and there's nothing to leak later. But if the model's output must contain the real email or order number, you need a mapping. Keep that map in memory for the request, or encrypt it, and never persist placeholders next to their real values in logs. Whatever you choose, log the masked text only and store any keys in Azure Key Vault. Here's the shape end-to-end. Your app receives the user request, runs redaction locally with Presidio inside the same process or container, then calls Azure OpenAI with only the masked prompt. The response comes back. You optionally rehydrate placeholders from your in-memory map and return it. Notice the redaction step sits before any boundary crossing. Put your application in a private network with a private endpoint to Azure OpenAI so traffic never traverses the public internet, and pull keys from Key Vault using managed identity. The model never sees a raw identifier. A few warnings. No detector hits 100% recall, so treat redaction as defense in depth, not a guarantee. And keep your Azure OpenAI data privacy and abuse monitoring settings configured correctly. Watch latency. Presidio's first call loads a model, so warm it at startup. Be careful with free text that hides identifiers inside longer strings. And don't redact so aggressively that you destroy the context the model needs to answer. Always test recall against a labeled sample of your real data and recheck the current Azure docs, since entity coverage and the managed services pricing and limits change. To recap, score your options on recall, reversibility, latency, coverage, and where the call runs. Regex alone is not enough for names and context. For most production Python workloads, start with Microsoft Presidio running locally with a reversible operator and keys in Key Vault, and reach for Azure AI Language PII detection when you want a managed model and broader coverage. Your one concrete takeaway today: insert a redaction step before any prompt crosses your boundary, and write a test that measures its recall on a real labeled sample. That test is what turns redaction from a hope into a control. If this helped, do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one. See you in the next video.